Welcome to the podcast, Yelling at the Refs. I'm not sure when, and I can't pinpoint it exactly, but about 10-ish years ago, referees in the NBA became super in shape, like fresh out the weight room, chest muscles filling their shirt like the male version of Baywatch. And they couldn't wait to signal a May 3 or call it traveling, just so they could show off their bulging triceps. The NFL seemingly went through a similar shift at about the same time. And all of a sudden, referees were these really in shape humans in peak physical condition. Have you ever heard of Jeffrey Anderson? Just Google him, Jeffrey Anderson. He's a ref. And somehow he's gotten a reputation and received a nickname. He's been anointed the high knees ref. It's good, wholesome stuff. Like I said, Google him, check it out. But I wonder who takes the time to point out some of these crazy things. But somebody somewhere has even created a dedicated Twitter or X. I apologize for still calling it Twitter sometimes. They've created a dedicated X account, like an actual account that just tracks and posts him doing his high knees routine mid-game at various arenas around the country. It's hilarious. And if you didn't know any better, you'd think it was a parody skit for Saturday Night Live or something like that. But clearly a referee who's in good shape, good enough to do high knees across the court during a high-level NCAA Division I game. These guys and girls, these referees that work their way up like the ones we watch on primetime TV, high-level college games, those refs are paid really, really well to be in great shape. There was a graphic going around on social media recently about a referee, Roger Ayers, who reffed 31 straight games. 31 games in 31 nights, 15 states, 26,000 miles traveled, 31 straight games. And in this graphic, they were celebrating his first night off. 31 straight games. Think about that. And that means he's making some good money, right? Those guys don't do it for free. And according to statistics, NBA refs make about $7,000 per game. And there's different scales, different levels, different tiers, but about $7,000 per game. And no, I'm not going to insert any type of betting joke about how they put the majority of the money on the home team or anything like that. I'll let you and your own imagination run wild and you can add in your own joke. Think about that though. $7,000 per game. And according to various online sources, the best NBA refs make way more than $500,000 a season, plus bonuses for the playoffs. That's a lot of money to run back and forth watching a basketball game. But I have a very important question for you. Would you want to do it? There's all kinds of perks, rubbing shoulders and standing on the same court as the best players in the world, amazing travel, amazing accommodations, first class everything everywhere you turn. You lift weights, eat healthy, stay in shape, attend some meetings and seminars, and get paid to be on national TV, reffing a game. Seems simple and easy enough, right? And you get paid great. So, would you want to do it? Let's be fair and look at the other side of the coin though, too. Probably away from home a lot with all the travel, a lot of late nights and weird sleep schedules to accommodate the super late primetime slots, especially on the West Coast. But let's go back to Roger Ayers, the NCAA ref who reffed 31 straight games. Think about that travel schedule, 26,000 miles in roughly a calendar month, changing time zones, messed up sleep schedule, again and again and again. And maybe the worst part about it, you have about 15 to 20,000 fans screaming and yelling every single time you make a call that goes against their team. All those home fans angry at you every single call. Doesn't even matter if you're right or wrong. Fans wear a special kind of glasses. They always want their team to get the benefit of the call. And there's more fans, a couple million plus, sitting at home, watching on TV, and yelling at the screen every time you blow your whistle. But at least you don't hear them in person. Unless they make a social media parody account about you and show your mistakes or show you running around doing high knees or butt kicks. But the refs at that level, they know that's part of the job, and it comes with the territory. More screaming fans, more stress, more scrutiny, more money. Simple. So whether it's right or wrong, the fact of the matter is that the paying customer feels like he or she has a right to cheer or yell, depending on which word you want to use. They feel like they have a right to cheer. They feel like they have a right to yell at those games. And honestly, it does add to the atmosphere. The PA announcers at those games and on the wraparound TV screens, jumbotrons, they're constantly encouraging fans, make some noise. And that's what makes those games special, just not for the refs. But I'm not talking about fans yelling at the refs at professional or college games. And to be clear, I'm not sure if we shouldn't stop beating around the bush and call college games professional games now. With all the NIL and transfer portal stuff going on, not every level, But the Power Five schools, they're basically professional sports organizations now. But like I said, I'm not talking about fans yelling at the refs at professional or college games when the noise and the atmosphere of the arena is so loud that it's hard to single out any one voice. It's all just a roar, and a lot of the people yelling are sitting so far away that it doesn't even make it to the court to affect or impact the referees because of the overall noise and the roar of the crowd. So I'm not talking about those refs. I'm not talking about referees at that level. I'm talking about yelling at the refs in youth games, all the way up to high school. Some of them are 100 years old. Not literally, but sometimes it feels like it. I'm not age shaming or whatever the politically correct term is for that, but I am pointing out, and let's just say that the majority of the referees I see at some of my kids' games, they didn't graduate in the 2000s or the 90s or the 80s or the 70s. Okay, I'll stop there. You get my point. They're older gentlemen that are doing the best they can. Are you the same man that you were when you're in your peak physical prime? No, you're not. And that's okay. You're hopefully wiser, more experienced, more mature, and they are too. I actually really respect some of these guys for even being able to get up and down the court at all in their 70s. That's not a joke. I hope I'm still fit enough to run around as I get into my later years. So respect to them. I mean that from the heart, respect. But the fact remains that fans, mainly parents, but fans, they complain and say things about their age. Like, why can't we find any refs under 100 years old? Or the classic, they're blind out there. And sometimes you hear some funny ones. They just want to get their 40 bucks and go home and take a nap. Or they probably can't even hear us anyways. Think about the stuff you hear at the games you attend. It's crazy. Think about it. And keep in mind, the referees we talked about at the pro level, they're in shape, they're fit, they're traveling, and they're getting paid crazy amounts of money. We're not seeing that. The referees that you're watching at your youth games, they're not getting paid like that. It's not at that level. And people don't always understand that. They expect professional referees to be at youth kids' games, getting 25, 30, 40 bucks a game. You can't have the same expectations. It's not the same. So think about what you hear at these games, the stuff you hear coming from the crowd that parents are yelling out at these referees, directed at the referees. Maybe even sometimes humorous, but also kind of towing the line and creeping toward mean stuff being said to refs, humans. And the closer the game, the closer the score, the worse it gets. The more people think that they need to share their insight, their vantage point, their opinion, to help sway the refs to make the right call, quote unquote, right call for their team. Because the right call is always for their team, obviously. And the complaining crosses all socio-demographic boundaries. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, how much money you have in the bank. Loud parents are loud parents. And if somebody filmed you yelling at the refs at your local 7th grade game, they tagged you, they added your name, they added subtitles so people can read and see what you were saying, and posted it to social media, how would it make you look? What would the people you work with think? What would your boss think? Do people ever say anything nice to refs? Not sarcastic nice, like, great call, you jerk. Not like that. Do people ever genuinely say anything nice and mean it? And especially when it goes against their team? The answer is a resounding no. They don't. Think about it. Think about doing a job in which nobody ever really says good job to you. Maybe your boss or your supervisor after a game or something like that. But even then, it probably comes with some extensive corrections, some specific reviews of plays that perhaps should have gone the other way. It's a tough job, and nobody appreciates you. In fact, the best referees are the ones you never even notice. You've heard that saying before, right? But that's hard to do. And I coach professionally in Europe, and it's hard not to remember any ref who ever made a call that I disagreed with. It is. Because in the heat of the battle, you feel like they're trying to cheat you. They're not. They're just human. And the best refs in my mind are the ones that I don't remember. Think about that. If you can walk away from a game and not remember who was reffing, they did a great job. That's a fact. And it's a cute little saying too. But in reality, humans want their teams to win. The excitement, the drama, the tension of live sports is a bonding experience, almost primeval experience that we share with each other. It brings us together, unites us, solidifies alliances, and establishes boundaries between different clans. We as a culture, we need sports to take us away from the monotony of our daily lives. So we're obviously very passionate about it. And that bleeds all the way down to how we support our sons, our daughters, our grandsons, our granddaughters at their games. We want them to have success and we want them to win. And sometimes those gosh darn referees, they get in the way of both of those objectives. So, do people ever say anything nice to refs? Generally, no, they don't, unless it's from one ref to another or an ex ref to a ref. Instead, the crowd says stuff like, "Did you leave your glasses at home? How can you miss that? Are you blind? Stevie Wonder sees better than you do." I was at a game last season when a mom screamed at the ref, "You better go back to Foot Locker with that striped shirt because you definitely don't belong here." And honestly, it was funny. People laughed. Wasn't nice and definitely wouldn't go in the category of complimentary feedback, but at least it wasn't mean. But there's some crazy stuff that gets yelled and said to referees. So we have two vital questions to ask ourselves. Should you yell at the refs? Reminder, I'm focused primarily on youth games right now, high school and younger. For sure, some of these points, if not the majority of them, they apply to the professional level too, but I'm focused on youth sports, and thus the referees and parent-fan behavior at youth games. So question number one, should you yell at the refs? The answer to this is probably not. And the reason I say probably not instead of no is that there's a lot of gray area in all of this. Because I've also seen some really bad refs that maybe lost control of a game and allowed too much physicality to take place early on, which led to retaliatory and egregious fouls later in the game, causing players to get injured. That's one reason that there's a gray area. Another reason is that the referees are human, and sometimes, just sometimes, they allow their own ego and feelings to cloud their judgment, and it can affect their vision to punish a player or coach who's done or said something to show them up, which damages their ego because they're human. So the clever refs, they remember the player's jersey number and he bides his time until the right moment, sometimes several minutes later or even in the next quarter, and he makes a call or doesn't make a call that clearly is wrong just to show who's boss. That happens, thus forcing me to answer probably not to the question, should you yell at the refs? There's gray areas that exist, but it's also a reflection of your own patience, empathy, and maybe even character when you allow yourself to get so worked up that you scream at the refs. Because you probably didn't walk into the gym with the goal of sounding like a jerk, being a hypocrite, and being exclusively subjective about wanting calls only for your son or daughter's team. That probably wasn't your plan. You weren't intentionally trying to distract away from the game itself. You don't want to take attention away from the kids that are trying to play, which leads us to question two. Does yelling at the refs influence their calls? Does yelling at the refs help? Do the referees ever change their call? Once again, I'm not referring to professional sports where there's instant replay, coaching challenges, and all that. If your youth team has that type of equipment, please let me know in the comments because I'd love to come watch a game there. I'm talking about your typical high school with some cheerleaders and student sections on a random weeknight, or your fourth or sixth grade son or daughter's team that's probably playing in a slippery middle school gym somewhere with about 50 fans in the gym, including moms, dads, siblings, and some grandmas and grandpas if you're lucky enough for them to be close enough to come watch games. Do the referees ever change their call? Like, have they ever called a travel and you yell out, "Come on, he kept his pivot foot, you bozo." And then they blow the whistle in three quick bursts to signal that a parent has successfully used their challenge card, and then they announce that the call's being reversed, as if it's a game of Uno. In what world have you ever seen that happen? It might be nice now that I think about it, but until now, that doesn't exist. They don't change their calls when you yell at them. Because one, they probably can't hear you anyways. That's a joke. And two, that's not how the game works. Sometimes they do huddle and come together. And I love when I see that, by the way, because it shows a special human side of the game where one ref concedes to the other, to his or her partner, and says, "You know what? You had the better angle. Let's go with that." Red ball. I love when I see that because they communicated, they held a quick conference, and made sure they were on the same page. That's fair. That's all we could ever ask for. That happens sometimes when they change a call, but not just because of the parents yelling. They want to do a good job and get it right and not be noticed because the best refs are the ones we never even notice, right? But again, to the gray areas of this, they'll do this. The referees will come together and change their call if the entire gym moans in disapproval sometimes. So maybe, just maybe, it does make sense to complain. One of those, and I quote, squeaky wheel gets the grease type situations. A lot more on that quote in a future episode too, by the way. And maybe you can already guess what that topic will be. So remember that saying and stay tuned. But sometimes the referees do come together because of the crowd. So back to our two questions. 1. Should you yell at the refs? Probably not. Question 2. Does yelling at the refs change anything? Maybe in some really, really rare situations, if and when the entire crowd notices and complains, and the referees, at least one of them, realizes they were wrong. But to really answer these questions, I would like to ask you a question. Yes, you, sitting in your car, heading home from a long day at work, or running on the treadmill, or painting the dining room, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, and wherever you are in the world right now. I have a question for you. Would you want to be a ref? And I mean that as a serious question because there's a huge shortage of referees in youth sports. Huge. They can't find enough refs for games, and sometimes games need to be canceled, or teachers and coaches have to volunteer and step in. And can you guess why? Like, can you guess why that is? Think about everything we've been talking about so far. How it must feel to be underappreciated and scrutinized like that. Other than performing heart surgery, is there any other job on earth that can be so stressful? Every decision questioned by half the gym. Players talking back because they see their idols in the NBA on TV doing that. So now they think it's okay to argue with the refs and complain about calls. Parents complaining, players complaining, coaches complaining. It takes a special person to be a ref. Seriously. You have to have crazy thick skin because you know before you ever walk through those doors and put your whistle on and tie your shoes or Velcro them. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. You know what you're walking into. You're walking into the fire. So would you want to be a ref and deal with all of that? Probably not, right? So my hope is that after taking some time to reflect and consider the different areas that we've discussed, you remember the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Meaning, treat the referees with some respect, some kindness, just like you would want to be treated if you were out there. Imagine that they're not trying to cheat your son or daughter, or that they're out to get your team. Assume that they're doing the best they can to call a fair game, but know that they're human and that they're going to make a mistake here and there. And it's not the end of the world. Bad calls happen in sports, and learning how to deal with them, that's part of the game too. So have some empathy and think twice before your emotions get the best of you next time you're watching a youth game. Think twice before you raise your voice to question a call. Because believe it or not, referees are human. They're people that smile, that laugh, that have a full range of emotions, just like you. They just happen to have a job in a room full of people judging their every move. And for extra credit, just a little cherry on top, I'd like to challenge you. The next time you're in a gym, the next time the game is over, especially after a loss, that's a part of this challenge. The next time you're at a game and your son or daughter's team loses and you see the referees sitting in the corner in their two chairs, checking their phones just like you do, just like your kids do, taking a sip of water and resting their feet for a couple minutes in between games, walk up to them, smile, say thank you, we appreciate you, and then keep walking. So the other part of your brain doesn't start to blurt out something like, except for that one play in the second quarter when you missed that foul call. See if you can do that. See if you can walk up to them, smile, and show some appreciation. As always, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know if you've ever had to ref a game. It's not easy, right? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and send this episode to at least one basketball parent you know. Be honest. We all have that one friend who goes a little cuckoo at games. And if you don't know who that person is in your friend group, then it's probably you. So please help us share the podcast so we can keep growing our audience. But most importantly, be nice to the refs, unless you're willing to get out there yourself. Come get some.